Close the door behind you, she said, without looking up. That was the moment I knew, not suspected, knew. I'd been summoned, not consulted. I was no longer a voice in the room. I was a name on a list. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 47 years old. Or, according to our new CEO, 47 years too old. I spent the last 16 years as Senior Vice President of Strategy and Client Development at Corvex Dynamics. My team generated over 60% of the company's total revenue stream last fiscal year. We didn't just meet projections, we set the pace. We didn't chase trends, we made them. I thought that mattered. I sat down across from her, a woman barely in her 30s, dressed like a magazine cover, but with the warmth of a stainless steel elevator. She didn't look up from her iPad. She just tapped her screen once, rotated it toward me, and slid a folder across the glass desk. "Effective immediately," she said. No greeting, no thank you. Just efficient extermination? I opened the folder, 2 sheets, termination notice, severance details, confidentiality clauses. It was all there, streamlined, bullet-pointed, and bloodless. She finally looked at me. "You're a symbol of how things used to be," she said, like I was a rusted sign outside a forgotten diner. "We need someone who won't slow us down with legacy thinking." I didn't blink, I just watched her. She had no idea what she just said out loud, because legacy is only a weakness to people who've never built one. I signed the papers, no comment, no argument. I reached out, shook her hand, firm, professional, like nothing had just shattered, and I walked out. The hallway felt longer than it ever had before, or maybe that was just my pride catching up with me. I passed by conference rooms I helped design, saw junior executives I'd mentored, looking confused as I walked by without my badge. No one stopped me, no one knew. That's the most brutal part of being erased. It's not dramatic, it's quiet, surgical. I stepped into the elevator alone, pressed G, watched the numbers count down. My reflection in the mirrored panel looked the same, but something in my eyes had shifted. Not rage, not even sadness. Precision. Outside, the wind hit harder than I expected. I stood at the base of the Corvex Tower, 15 stories of glass and ambition, staring up at the company I helped scale from a scrappy consulting shop into an industry leader. My ideas lived in their pitch decks, my models in their investor calls. My fingerprints were on every win, and none of it mattered anymore. I wanted to laugh, I didn't, but I smiled. And not the kind of smile you offer in defeat, the kind you make when someone shows you their hand too early. She thought she'd won. She thought I'd disappear, that I'd go gentle, maybe write a blog post about turning the page, that I'd take the check, play golf, and become a cautionary tale in PowerPoint slides about innovation. But I wasn't mad. I was awake. Legacy thinking? Let's talk about that. Legacy thinking is what kept this company alive during the 2012 recession. It's what landed the Delmar contract no one else could touch. It's what made my team the most requested, most reliable, and most profitable unit in the firm. But she didn't see any of that, because people like her don't look back. They bulldoze forward, convinced that new is better and old is broken. She didn't just fire me, she lit a match. And I don't think she realized what she was standing on. There's something they never teach in business school. What happens when the man you cut loose isn't bitter? He's patient. I walked 3 blocks without direction, just letting my feet go where they wanted. I passed a coffee shop I used to bring interns to. One of them had cried there once after botching a major call. I coached him through it. He runs a startup now. I smiled again, different kind of smile this time. She thinks I'm irrelevant, that I don't know how the game is played anymore, that I'm slow, heavy, outdated. She has no idea that while she was posting LinkedIn think pieces about disruption, I was building networks that span 3 industries. She doesn't know about the exit I helped orchestrate last quarter, or the white label analytics firm I quietly helped fund. I may be gone from Corvex, but I'm not gone, not by a mile. That building behind me? It looks tall, but it's hollow now. I know which beams are cracked, I know where the rod is, and I know who's going to be the first to notice when it starts to fall. I took out my phone. I had one number already dialed. I didn't press call, not yet. First, I needed coffee, black, no sugar, because if she thinks I'm legacy, then I'll show her what a legacy can do when you try to burn it down. The first week felt like jet lag, only the flight was internal. One day I was coordinating multi-million-dollar proposals and reviewing quarterly forecasts. The next, I was watching sunlight crawl across my kitchen counter like it had somewhere better to be. I didn't post anything, didn't email old colleagues. I let the silence settle in. My phone buzzed constantly for the first 72 hours. Not reporters, not executives, my team. The ones who built the engine with me, while leadership just polished the hood. I ignored every call at first, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know what to say that wouldn't sound like a wound begging for stitches. I wasn't ready to bleed in front of anyone. But on day 4, I answered Noah's call. Noah had been my strategy lead for 5 years. A beast with numbers, and an even bigger beast when someone tried to manipulate them. His voice cracked halfway through his first sentence. "They're calling it restructuring. Said your exit was part of a mutual vision." I almost laughed. Mutual vision? The only mutual thing about it was the handshake I gave her after she pushed me out. They've reassigned us, broke up the team, said cross-functional synergy would help with innovation velocity. Translation, they threw darts at a buzzword board and called it leadership. I didn't vent, just listened. Let him get it out. "You're not the only one who's gone," he said before hanging up. "Just the only one they were dumb enough to let walk out the front door." Over the next week, I talked to 3 others, Rachel, developer Monica, all shaken, none surprised. They didn't see it coming, but once it happened, everything made more sense. The rushed approvals, the half-explained policy shifts, the sudden obsession with rebranding instead of rebuilding. Morale was tanking. Clients were asking questions. Old relationships, the kind we spent years cultivating, were suddenly brittle. And yet, the company doubled down, called it bold innovation, released an internal video featuring the new CEO pacing in front of a digital whiteboard, talking about velocity, future readiness, and other things that meant absolutely nothing to the clients who just wanted results. It would have been funny if it wasn't so tragic. 2 weeks in, I met with an old contact over dinner. Mid-sized firm, high potential, too small to compete with Corvex head-on, but nimble, capable, hungry. They'd heard what happened. He didn't ask for details, just said, "If you ever want to build something smarter, we've got tools. We just need vision." I told him I didn't want a title, didn't want to sit in front of quarterly boards again. I didn't need to be the face. I just wanted to design something that actually worked. He raised his glass. No contracts, no fanfare, just understanding. That night, I started drawing again. Not literal drawings, models, frameworks. What Corvex should have done last quarter, what it could have done next year. Not out of spite, but out of instinct. I wasn't trying to get back at them. I was trying to see if the muscle still worked. It did. In fact, it had gotten stronger. By week 3, I was holding late-night strategy sessions in my living room. Small group, no branding, no announcements, just people who respected ideas over egos. We broke down product-market fit assumptions, analyzed what the legacy playbooks still got right, and where they needed upgrades. We mapped out a growth plan that Corvex would have buried under jargon. It felt like building again. Only now, no one above us was rearranging the scaffolding mid-construction. Then Noah called again. He'd been digging into some internal reports. He wasn't supposed to have access, but old habits die hard. "They told the board you left voluntarily, that you stepped back to explore advisory roles." My hand froze over my keyboard. "They didn't just fire you," he said. "They rewrote it." That's when something inside me clicked. It wasn't just arrogance. It was strategy. She wanted a clean narrative, couldn't afford the optics of ousting the guy who carried the P and L. So she sold them a version that made her look like she inherited a vacancy, not created one. I didn't respond right away. I just stared at my notes. Suddenly they weren't theoretical anymore. They were loaded. Because now I knew 2 things. 1, the board had no idea I'd been terminated. 2, the clients who left weren't chasing hype. They were searching for stability. And that meant the myth was cracking. Not because I said a word, but because I didn't have to. The truth has gravity. Eventually, it pulls everything down with it. I closed my laptop and looked around the room. Paper everywhere, data maps, coffee stains. It didn't look like revenge. It looked like preparation. I wasn't gone, just quiet. For now. The first article called it "The New Face of Disruption," a puff piece. All gloss, no substance. The kind of article where the journalist clearly copied lines from the press kit without blinking. The photo showed her in a blazer 3 sizes too bold, standing in front of a holographic projection of nothing. Corvex CEO pushes boundaries with tech-forward strategy, the headline beamed. I didn't even finish the piece. I didn't have to. The narrative was predictable, fast, fearless, female. The industry loves a headline they can rally behind. The next few weeks were a parade of press releases, a brand partnership with a celebrity fitness guru, a VR integration no one asked for, repackaged dashboards now labeled with meaningless AI acronyms. She called it redefining client engagement. I called it expensive noise. At first, it worked. Stock price ticked up. LinkedIn was ablaze with hashtags. I watched from the quiet of my home office, coffee in hand, models open on the screen, amused. Because I knew what was coming. By week 4, the first cracks showed. A major client, one I'd personally secured after a 3-month courting period, quietly terminated their renewal. No public announcement, just a name removed from the client roster. Week 6, another client defected, and this one didn't go quietly. They released a statement, neutral in tone, but clear in implication. We're shifting to a more focused strategic partner aligned with long-term stability. They were talking about us, the firm I'd been quietly advising. We weren't flashy, no holograms, no hashtags, just a product that worked and a strategy that listened. That's the thing about stability. It's not sexy, but it sells, especially when everyone else is lighting fires for attention. At night, I started publishing again, not under my name. I wasn't interested in ego points, just influence. I used an old pseudonym I'd registered years ago. North Metric, clean, credible, just ambiguous enough to sound like a boutique consultancy. The first piece was a teardown of trend-based decision-making, the hidden cost of speed-first strategy. It wasn't bitter, it was precise. Case studies, forecast errors, market psychology. It hit a nerve. Industry people started sharing it, quietly at first, then publicly. My inbox lit up, not with replies, but with forwarded versions of my own work. Colleagues wondering, "This sounds like Mercer, doesn't it?" It did, because I wasn't hiding my voice, just my name. Over the next 2 weeks, I dropped 3 more pieces, one on retention risk and brand-first transformations, one on the importance of grounded metrics during market fluctuations, and the last, a quiet grenade, on the systemic fragility of firms that dismiss legacy leadership before extracting its embedded knowledge. That one hit hardest, because the board read it. I know because Noah told me. He sat in on the executive debrief, said the CEO brushed it off as fear-based drivel, but 2 directors took copies home. One even asked who wrote it. No one could say for sure. But the tension was growing. Internally, revenue had dropped, not catastrophic, but enough. Enough to raise questions, enough to cause nervous glances in meetings, enough for the finance lead, who once called me foundational, to text me a single word late one night, missing. She didn't mean data. By now my quiet firm had landed 4 former Corvex clients, not poached, just caught in freefall. We didn't promise innovation, we promised equilibrium. In chaos, that's currency. I could have gone public, written an op-ed, told the truth, but that would have made it about me. And this wasn't about proving I was right. It was about proving I was needed. That all along, while they worshiped speed, it was the steady hand they underestimated. I turned my attention to scaling. The small firm I'd been consulting for, lean, hungry, smart, was ready for phase 2. We didn't call it a takeover. We called it an alignment. I wasn't on the masthead, but my systems were in the bones. We didn't throw parties. We built frameworks. The market responded, not loudly, but with money, retention up, churn down, satisfaction scores climbing. All the metrics that Corvex used to own and now couldn't control. Meanwhile, I received a forwarded memo from an insider. Internal code read. Subject line, competitive intelligence interference. It was about me, or rather about North Metric. They were trying to reverse engineer the impact. Too late. The ripple had already become a wave. I leaned back in my chair, watching the early morning fog slide past the window. I wasn't smiling this time. I was calculating. They'd built a brand on speed, but forgot to build brakes. Now they were skidding, and the man they left behind. He was building the road. I didn't need an office. I didn't need a nameplate. I just needed time. And they'd given me that for free. The invitation came through a mutual contact, someone I'd mentored years ago who now ran programming for the summit. "We need someone to speak on adaptive strategy," she said. "Someone who's lived both sides of disruption." I told her I wasn't looking to get back into the spotlight. She laughed. "Then good news. You won't be in the spotlight. You'll be the spotlight." 3 weeks later, I was standing behind the curtain of a luxury ballroom in Chicago, watching rows of executives settle into velvet chairs under chandeliers that cost more than my first apartment. The panel was called Legacy versus Velocity. Who really wins the market war? Cute. I wore a dark charcoal suit, no tie, clean, grounded, not flashy, just hard to ignore. When they called my name, the room went still. A few heads turned in surprise. Some leaned to whisper, and in the back row, almost hidden behind a column, I saw her, the CEO, polished, stone-faced. And next to her, 3 members of the Corvex board. I didn't flinch. The moderator teed up the opening question with a grin. "Mr. Mercer, you've had quite the year. Any thoughts on what companies keep getting wrong about transformation?" I leaned forward. "They forget that transformation without retention is just chaos in better lighting." The crowd laughed, then quieted, scribbling that one down. For the next 45 minutes, I didn't perform. I taught. I outlined failure patterns. I gave case studies of firms that chased relevance so hard they lost their reason to exist. I shared lessons. No bitterness, no names, but every line carried a pulse. Because I wasn't speaking about Corvex, I was speaking through them. The applause at the end was generous, earned, not inflated. I stepped off stage, straight into the controlled chaos of the VIP lounge. Handshakes, requests, congratulations. A few thinly veiled recruiting pitches. Then a voice behind me said, "You still order your steak medium rare?" I turned. It was Charles Brenner, Corvex board chair, white hair, heavy glasses. Smart enough to know when to stop talking and start listening. He didn't wait for an answer, just gestured toward a private room off the lounge. "Walk with me." The room was small, dark wood, 1 round table, 2 plates already waiting, filet mignon, fingerling potatoes, old-school hospitality for a very new problem. He didn't waste time. "We're in trouble." I sipped water, let the silence stretch. "Revenue is down double digits. Clients are ghosting us, press is shifting, and internally, people are confused." "You mean scared," I said. He didn't argue. "I'll be direct," he continued. "We're discussing transitional leadership, a reset, but the optics are tricky. We need guidance. Quietly." He looked at me like a man used to getting agreement with a raised eyebrow. I didn't raise mine. "No title," he said quickly. "No press. Just your perspective. You'd be compensated fairly, of course." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a white envelope. Thick, sealed, no branding. "This," I said, sliding it across the table, "is a full strategic roadmap I authored last December. It was submitted, reviewed, then shelved." He stared at it. "It outlines a series of pivot recommendations across client retention, product tier balancing, and feedback loop velocity. Had it been executed, your Q2 growth projection would have been 38.7%, conservatively." Charles didn't touch it. Not yet. He just looked at me. "Why give me this?" "Because I already built the future they said I was too slow to imagine." He picked up the envelope, turned it over in his hands like it might detonate. "It's not bitterness," I added. "It's clarity. You want help? Start by remembering who built the floor you're standing on." He nodded, slowly. "And if we wanted more than this document?" I stood up. "You don't need me to come back. You just need to stop pretending I was the problem." He didn't argue, just watched as I placed my napkin gently over the untouched plate. At the door, I paused. "By the way," I said without turning, "page 9 has a list of clients. Half of them are on your risk register now. I flagged that 6 months ago." Then I walked out, not angry, not vindicated, just sure. Outside, the air was colder than I remembered, crisp in that way only a Midwest evening can be. I checked my phone. 2 messages from firms wanting follow-ups. One from a former Corvex analyst who just jumped ship and was asking for advice. and one from my new partner. 3 more signed, all from your old portfolio. I smiled. They called it bold. The market called it a mistake. And me? I was the echo they couldn't outrun. The office is quiet, just the way I like it. No glass trophy cases, no inspirational posters with words like synergy or grit. Just a desk, a city view, and the steady hum of something real being built. It's been 6 months since that dinner with Charles. 6 months since I slid that envelope across the table like a hand grenade made of data. I haven't stepped foot in Corvex since. I won't. Not out of pride, out of principle. I lead strategy now for a firm half their size, and twice their discipline. No flash, no noise, just results. We recently landed our 3rd major contract once owned by Corvex. All of them came to us the same way, quietly, no pomp, no drama, just a phone call that started with, "We're looking for something steadier." They didn't want disruption, they wanted stability. Legacy, they called it, like it was something to be ashamed of. Turns out when the market turns rough and boardrooms get nervous, legacy is what keeps the lights on. I wake early these days, earlier than I used to. Not because I have to, but because I can. I like watching the city before it wakes, before the emails and forecasts and meetings. There's a stillness at that hour, the kind that doesn't ask for attention. It just exists. This morning, I got a call around 6. A junior strategist I've been mentoring, fresh out of an Ivy League program, sharp as glass, but too used to being the smartest in the room. He's learning now that smart isn't enough. You need stamina, you need humility, you need to know when not to speak. He asked me how I stayed grounded when things went sideways. I told him I never tied my identity to the building I worked in, that titles are temporary, but your frameworks, those live longer than your job description. He was quiet for a while. Then he said, "I want to build something that lasts." I told him, "Good, then don't rush. Fast grows break fastest." After the call, I poured a cup of coffee and opened my laptop. The headline stared back at me. Corvex CEO resigns amid client exodus, cites personal interests. Right below it, a second headline. Company's downfall, a failure to recognize its strongest asset. I didn't need to read the article. I already knew the contents. They'd been written in real time. Every client departure, every missed forecast, every late pivot dressed in buzzwords. She didn't fail because she was too bold. She failed because she mistook momentum for mastery. You can't steer a ship with style. You need ballast, weight, depth. And they threw theirs overboard. I closed the laptop. No gloating, no satisfaction, just confirmation. It would have been easy to feel vindicated, to post a vague status on LinkedIn, to let the whispers swirl louder, to let people connect the dots. But I didn't want applause. I wanted distance. I didn't leave to prove a point. I left because I was the point, and they didn't see it. Now, I spend my time building people, not just plans. I work with founders who still sketch ideas on napkins, who care more about customer pain points than quarterly optics. I teach them to think in systems, not moments, in patterns, not trends. Most of them have no idea I ever worked at Corvex. They don't need to. That chapter doesn't define me. It only sharpened me. Sometimes I get calls from old colleagues, some still there, some gone. They ask what I think of the new direction. I always say the same thing. I hope they learn. I really do. Because the goal was never to burn it down. It was to outlast it. And I have. They thought I was dead weight, but I was ballast. The kind that keeps ships steady in storms. The kind they only miss once they start to sink. I watch the city breathe beneath me, a mix of noise and promise. And I smile, not because I won, but because I never needed to. Relevance is a sprint. Legacy is a marathon. And I'm still running.